Hello everyone, welcome to HJ Programming Solutions. So in today's video we are going to create a Spring Boot project and we will perform the CRUD operations using REST API. So these many REST points we are going to create. Very first one is to get all the students. So if I hit this request in my Postman, then I should get all the students which are there in my student database. After that, if I hit this request where I am passing a particular student ID, then I should get only that student details. For example, if I am passing here the ID 1 or the roll number 1, then I should get the details of the student whose roll number is 1. Same way, we need to create one request which will create a new student or which will add a new student in your student database, right? After that, we will see how we can update the student details. So I have one REST point here. Okay, so localhost :8080 student, then update. So here I will pass the student ID. Let's suppose I am passing student ID as a 2, then I will able to update the details for the student whose ID is 2. And after that, if you want to delete a particular student, then you can have this request. You can pass here the ID which you want to delete, and once you hit this request, then that student details should be deleted. That student record should be deleted from our table. So these are the CRUD operations and these are the REST points we are going to create today in our application. Now, which are the dependencies we need to create this project? See here, very first dependency we need is a Spring Web dependency. And why we need this dependency? Because we are creating a Spring REST APIs, right? So we need to add the Spring Web dependency, then DevTools, so that every time if I make any changes, then I don't have to restart the server every time. Automatically, if you are making any changes and as soon as you save that file, then automatically the server will reload. Okay, so we don't have to restart the server again and again. So we can add DevTools dependency. After that, MySQL connector, because I am going to connect my application to the MySQL, and here we are going to use a Spring Data JPA. Okay, so that's the reason we need Spring Data JPA dependency. So these are the dependencies which are required to create our project. Okay, now let's go to the STS and try to create the project. Okay, so let me just go here. Okay, so see here, this is very clean window I have not created any project yet. Okay, so how to create the Spring Boot project in the STS? Very simple. You just have to go to this file and here you just click on the new and you have one option Spring Starter Project. You just have to click on that option. Then here you can give the name of your project. Okay, so let's suppose Spring Boot REST API project, right? So this is my project name. Then here I want to choose the type as a Maven, right? Because I want to create a Maven project. Then packaging will be jar and Java version you can just choose according to your requirement. So currently I will just keep 17. Okay, then here group, let's give it as com.hjprogramming.rest API. Okay, and I will just copy this and put here in the package also. Okay, then here the artifact, let's keep that as it is. Okay, then we will just click on the next. Here you need to choose which dependencies you require for your project. As we discussed, we need here Spring Web dependency, this one. Then we need the MySQL. Okay, so let me just write here this one, not this one, the SQL this one, MySQL driver, and then Spring Data JPA, and one more is there which is devtool. Okay, so let's just search for SpringBoot devtools. So see here, as we discussed, we need 4 dependencies. Very first one is devtool, then data JPA, MySQL driver, and Spring Web. Once you select the required dependencies, then just click on the next and then finish. Okay, so it will just create a Spring starter project for you. See here, it is just importing all the dependencies whatever we have chosen. Okay, so now let this complete the importing. So now our project is ready. Let's just go and see here, very first source main Java folder is created. Inside the source main Java, you will see that this is our main package, and inside the package I have Spring Boot REST API project application. So this is my main file. Already this file is created. Okay, so let's just minimize the font. Okay, this way. Okay, so see here, this is our main file. Inside this file I have the main method. Okay, so very first or the entry point for our Spring Boot project will be this file only, which is having @Spring Boot application annotation and main method. Okay, now one more folder got created here. See, source main resources. Inside this folder we have one file application.properties, and here we will mention all the properties whatever we are going to use in our project. After that, the important file is this one, the pom.xml. You will see that all the dependencies whatever we have selected will be present here. See, very first one is Spring Boot starter data JPA, then Spring Boot starter web, right? So we had selected data JPA, Spring Web, then devtools. Okay, and after that this one, the MySQL connector. Okay, so these are the 4 dependencies we have selected, and one more is default, which is a test. Okay, so this is automatically created, we have not added it, so let's just keep that. Now here let me just close this file. Now we need to create our endpoints, right? So before that, let me just go to my MySQL, and here I need to create one database. Okay, so let me just right click here and create a schema. I want to create, let's suppose, student database, right? Let's just click on the apply and close. So now if we just close this, yes, so see here I have a student database, right? Now inside this student database we have tables. So currently I don't have any table, so we will just create the table through our application itself. Okay, so now let's just go to the STS. Here very first we need to create the entity. So let me just create here one package. Right click on the new, then class. Okay, and here you need to first change the package. So let's suppose REST API dot entity. Okay, so I will just keep the package name as a entity. Then here let's give the entity name as a student, right? Because we are creating a student management application. Now click on the finish. Okay, now here in the student class, what are the fields I want? Very first one is, let's suppose, private int roll number of the student. Okay, then private string name of the student. After that, private maybe float percentage of the student. Okay, and one more field, let's add private string specialization or maybe the branch, right? So I have these many fields for my student entity. Okay, now what I want to store all of this data of the student, roll number, name, percentage and branch. All of the data should be stored in one table. Okay, so I have one here, the database, okay, which is the student database. Inside the student database, I want to create one table. Let's suppose the table name will be student, and in that table we want to store all the data. Okay, so very first let's just go to here, and we need to write some more annotations here. See here, very first we will write @entity, because this is the entity, right? So let me just write @entity. See here, this entity annotation is coming from Jakarta persistence. Okay, we have this dependency Spring Data JPA. That's the reason we are getting this @entity annotation. Okay, now one more annotation is there, which is @table. Okay, so here what I am saying, that this is my entity class, and whenever I run this application, I want Spring automatically create the table for me. So let's just give here the table name. Okay, so maybe table name we can give as a student. Okay, even if I don't write here the name, then what will happen? Whatever is your class name, that class name will consider as a table name. Only thing will be this S will become the capital. Okay, so even if I will not provide this thing, then also the table will get created with this name. Okay, so just for your information, I have written here name and student. You can give any name here. Okay, after that, what I want this roll number as a column, right? Then this name as a column, percentage and branch. Okay, so for that we use @column, but this roll number should be unique, right? So this roll number will be a primary key for my student table. So for that we will use here @ID annotation. And then I don't want to generate this, I don't want to create or set this roll number. Automatically this roll number should get created from the SQL. So I will write here generated value. So here I have generated value. Okay, dot, no, actually generated value, and here you can write a strategy, and I will just select the strategy as an identity. Okay, so ID is to make this roll number as a primary key, and then here I have returned generated value identity. I don't want to create, or I don't want to set this roll number. Okay, so whenever we will insert the entry for the student, automatically the roll number will get created. Okay, after that let's just make this as a column. Okay, and same here also we can make it as a column for the branch also. Okay, so if you want to give any different name, then you can just write it here also, the name, and you can write here maybe student name. Okay, and if you don't want to provide the explicitly the name, and if you want like the whatever will be your field name as your column name, then you don't have to write here. Automatically it will just create the column with name percentage. Okay, but if you want to explicitly provide, then you can write here name and then maybe student percentage. Okay, and here also I will just write name is equal to student branch. Okay, now let's create the getter and setter for all of these fields. Okay, so let me just create, right click here, go to the source, and here you have an option generate getter and setter. Okay, now select all and click on the generate. So here all the getter setter methods will get generated. One more thing I want to do, just click on the source and go to here you have generated toString, right? So we need this toString method also. So let's just generate it from the id itself. And after that, what we can do, we can just create here one default constructor. Okay, so let me just write student. This will be my default constructor, and I want to create a parameterized constructor also. So just right click, go to source, go here, you have one field, generate source code, sorry, generate constructor using fields. Okay, and here most probably we don't need the roll number because roll number will create automatically. So let's just keep name, percentage and branch and click on the generate. Okay, so this way our entity is ready. Right now the next task is to connect our application to the MySQL database, and for that what we need to do, we have to go to this resources folder, and here I have one file application.properties. So inside this application.properties file I will just mention this one, the properties. Okay, so what will be the properties? We want to connect our application to the MySQL database, right? So we need to provide the URL, then username, password, right? So these many things we need to provide. So let's just add here. Very first one is data source dot URL, right? So here you will just get auto suggestions also. So see here, I want spring dot data source dot URL. So let me just select this one. After that I need data source this one, spring dot data source dot name, right? So URL, then my username, and after that data source dot password, this one, spring dot data source dot password, right? Let me just write here the URL. So I am going to connect to the MySQL. So let me just write here jdbc colon MySQL colon / then localhost and colon 3306 will be the port for our MySQL, and then you have to give here your schema name. So our schema name is student database, right? You just need to confirm this schema name from here. See here, I have created student database, so same schema name we will give in our property also, right? So jdbc colon MySQL colon / localhost, this is our port and this is our schema name. After that you have to give here the username. Okay, so for me it is root, so I am writing here root. You can change according to your username. After that we need to provide the password. So I have the password root underscore pass underscore 1234. You need to change this username and password according to your username and password, right? So these are the basic properties which are required to connect your application to the MySQL database. Now what I want, see, I have written here, if we go to the student entity, I have written here @table, @id, @column. Why I have written all of this thing? So that automatically my table with the name student get created in my student database schema, right? So this schema we have provided. So inside this schema automatically one table should get created with the name student. So for that you need to provide one more property here. And what is the property name? You just write here hibernate dot this one, the DDL auto. Just click, and here you have to provide create or update. Whenever you are writing here create, it means it will create the, like, it will first check if you already have the student table, then it will drop that table and create the new table. Okay, but instead of create, if you are writing here update, then what will happen? If the already table with the name student is created or present in your database, then it will just alter the existing table itself. It will not drop the existing table. Okay, so let me just keep this as a create first. Now here I have returned DDL auto create, which means automatically the table will get created, right? So behind the scene, the query will get created to create new table, right? So that query I want to see. What query is generated behind the scene? I want to see that query. And for that, you just write here JPA dot show SQL, and you just write true, so that whatever are the queries generated behind the scene by the JPA or Hibernate, so those queries we can see in our console itself, right? So now if we save this, okay, go to our Spring Boot REST API project application file. This is our main file. So here you just right click, run as a Spring Boot project. So now one table should get created with the name student, right? So let's just see the console. Let me just increase it. See here what happened. Hibernate drop table if exist. Which table? Student. First it will check, do we have the student table? If it is already there, then drop that table and create a new table. See here, one query is generated, create a table student with these parameters, roll number, right? Then we have the percentage, then branch. So the table got created. How we can check it? Let's just go here in my MySQL workbench. Let me just refresh the student database. See, currently we don't have any table. Let me just refresh it, and you will see that in the table section one table got created, right? See what are the columns we have: roll number, student percentage, student branch, and student what is this, name. Okay, so these are the columns we have created. This table is created automatically. And why this is created? Because we have written here in the application.properties DDL auto as a create, right? And then in the student.java file, which is our entity, I have written @entity, @table, @id, then @column, right? So the table got created automatically. So for now, what are the things we are done with? Very first one, creation of project. Then we have created the entity, and after that we have connected our Spring Boot application to the MySQL database, and table is created with the name student. Right now I want to create this REST points. See here we have this REST point, this one, right? So I want to create this REST points. So very first one, let's just create for the maybe very first we will just create for get student or get all students, right? So let me just go here, okay, and let me create the controller first. So right click here, click on new class. Let me just change the package name dot controller, right? So in this controller I will create this one, the student controller, right? So this is my student controller. Okay, for now let me just stop this, otherwise it will just reload. As soon as I just do command save, automatically the project will get reloaded, right? Because we have added devtools dependency. Okay, so let me just close this one, console. Okay, and here this is our student controller, right? Now let me just add there is a slight mistake here. Let me just rename this controller. Okay, right click, then refactor, rename. Okay, so let me just make it as controller. Okay, now to make this as a controller, we need to add here @REST controller annotation, right? So now this is our controller, and now inside this controller I want to create my REST APIs, right? So very first one will be to get all the students, right? I want to get all the students which are there in my student table, right? So for that, write here one method, let's suppose public, and we want all the students, right? So here I want to return the list of the students. So return type will be list of students, right? And then here let me write the method name get all students, right? And here we need to return the list of the student, right? So for now just return the null. So this is my method, right? Now this is our get request. We want to get the student details, right? So for that here you need to write @request mapping, you can write, or maybe directly get mapping annotation, get mapping, right? And here you need to provide the mapping, right, or the URL. So for get all students I want to write the URL as a students, because we want to get all the students, right? So in our Chrome or maybe in our Postman, if I hit localhost colon 8080/students, then I should get all the students which are there in my student database or student table, right? So that's the reason I have written here @get mapping, and this is my URI. Okay, now see, I want to use here Spring Data JPA so that we can get all the students from the database, right? So for that, very first let's just go here, let me just open this one, and let's create here one repository first. Right click, new interface, and let me give here a name as a repository, or maybe let's just give repository, and the name of our interface will be student repository, right? And now what we will do, we will just extends to the JPA repository, extends to JPA repository, this one. And here if you see, I need to provide the class name. So our class name is student, so student dot class, and then even don't need to provide the dot class, just a student will be sufficient. And then the primary key type is integer, so let me just write here integer, right? So now what will happen, in this JPA repository already we have the methods. If we just go here, see, we have some methods. Okay, let's suppose delete all batch, or maybe let's just come here, see here find all method, then this is find all method. Again if you just see here, this is JPA repository is extending to the list CRUD repository. If you just go to the list CRUD repository, you will see that this is again extending to the CRUD repository, and inside this CRUD repository, see here all the CRUD operation methods are already there. Save, then save all. If we come here, we have find by ID, exist by ID, find all, right? So all of these methods are already there, and we will be using all of these methods for our CRUD operations, right? So now let's just go to the student repository, save this, go to our controller, and here I want to use that repository. So how I can use that? Here I need to write student repository, and let me write here a repo. Okay, and I want to auto wire this, so @auto wired. Okay, now here you can use repo dot find all students. See here, find all, and it will return you a list of students, right? And we also want to return the list of student itself. So this method will be perfect to fetch all the students from our student table, right? So repo dot find all, then just assign the variable. So assign a statement to new local variable. See here, list of students. So let me write here, it will return the students, right? And I want to return this list of students here. Okay, now see what will happen. I just created one endpoint which is of type get. See here, this is my URI. So whenever I am writing localhost 8080 students, then what will happen? We will come here, and by using our repository we are finding all the student details. We are fetching all the student details, and that students we are returning here. Okay, now if I save, okay, let me just go to our database first. If you see here, currently in the database we don't have any data. Let me just create it. So let's just see. Let's suppose the roll number is 1, and student percentage let me keep as 98. What is this? Student branch let me keep as IT, and student name let's suppose ABC. And now let me create one more student. The roll number will be 2, percentage will be 78, and the branch will be CO, let's suppose, and the student name will be XYZ. So now in my database, inside the student database I have a student table, and in this table I have two records with the roll number 1 and 2. Let me just apply and close. Now if you just hit this, see here, I have two records. So these two records created manually by me, right? So just to test our endpoint, this endpoint get students, right? So before that, what we need to do, we just have to come here and make this create as a update, so that our existing table should not be dropped. The existing table only we will use. Okay, so let me save and run the project. So this project I need to run. Right click here, run as a Spring Boot app. Let the project execute. See here, see, now your table is not dropped, it just altered the student table. Okay, now what I want to go to this Postman, and I want to hit this rest point, this one. If I just come here, see this rest point I want to hit, and if I hit this rest point I should get all the student details. Okay, so let's just go here to the Postman, and then let me just write here localhost colon 8080, because currently my project is running on the 8080 port, then slash students. And see here, we need to select the type. We have different types, right? Get, post, put. So currently we have implemented the get request. So let me just select here get. This is my endpoint, and let me just hit here send. See, now in the output you are able to see, right? See here, in the output what are the things we got? See, okay, let's just see here. You got the response. Inside the response, if you see, First you got the student details of the roll number 1, and then the student details for the roll number 2, right? So we have two records in our student table, and we have received the details of those two students with the status as a 200 OK, right? It means our students REST API is successfully executed and we have received the required result. Right now, if I just go here, see, the first endpoint was localhost 8080 students, and if I hit this endpoint, I should get all the student details. And if we see in the Postman, we are able to get all the student details, right? So our first REST point is done, which is get request, get all the student details, right? So now let me just go here and let me just create the another REST endpoint, which is to get the student based on ID. For example, if I pass the student ID 1 or student roll number 1, then I should get the details for that student only, right? So let me just write here the method for that, at the rate, this will be also a get mapping. So get mapping, and URI, let me just put here student or students, and then we want to pass the ID also, right? So that ID we will pass as a path variable. So let me write here at the in the curly brackets ID. The method we will write public. This method will return me a particular student because I am passing here the ID, right? Now get student, this will be my method, and this will return a particular student whose ID is this one, whatever we are passing, right? So very first, let me write here the path variable at the rate path variable int ID, right? So this is my ID, and this ID I will get in the URI itself. So now how my URI will look like? Localhost colon 8080 slash students, and then here I will pass my ID. So this ID will be the path variable, right? Now let me just return here the student. For now, let me just make it as a null. Okay, now let's use our repository. Inside the repository you have the method find by ID. See here, find by ID, and what this method is returning, this is returning the optional of student. So let me just use this, pass the ID here. Okay, now this method is returning optional, but I want the student, right? So for that, let me just use here get. Okay, now if you just assign new variable, assign statement to new local variable, see here I am getting a particular student whose ID is 1. Let's suppose I am sending here 1, right? Now this student I want to return here, right? Now if we save this, execute our program, let me just restart the server. See here, our application is up now. Let's go to Postman. Very first hit this service. See here, we have two students, right? Now I want to get a data of the student whose roll number is 1. Now if I send this request, see here, now I am getting a particular student. Let's suppose I am passing here the ID as a 2, then I should get the student data whose roll number is 2, right? So see here, we are getting it based on the ID which we have passed in the URI, right? So this way we are done with two requests. Very first one, get all students. Second one, get a student based on roll number, right? Now I want to create a new student, right? So for that, let's go to our STS. Okay, let me just stop the server because otherwise it will just reload again and again, right? So let me just stop it. come here, and now I want to create a new student, right? So for that, let me create the method public void create student, right? Now if we just see, let me just change it to public. Okay, now here what I want to create a new student, right? So to create the student, see here in the Postman, you have to use this post request, then you have to provide the URL. For example, here I want to write the URI as localhost 8080 student, and then I want to just add here this add. So this will be my URI. Right now in the body we need to pass the data, right? Let me just select here raw. So in this body we need to pass this student data. For example, let me just copy and paste here. Roll number we don't have to create because roll number automatically will get created. Name, let's just pass as maybe the name will be max. Percentage, let me make it as 77, and branch maybe ENTC. Okay, so now see, let me make it as JSON. See, now we are passing the data here, name, percentage and branch. Now what is the expectation? Whenever you are hitting this URL, then automatically new student will get created and stored in our student table, right? So for that, let's just go to the STS here, and we need to pass here the student in the request body. So for that, let me use here the annotation @request body, and in the request body what we are passing, we are passing a student, right? Now let me use here @PostMapping. To create a new student, you need to use a PostMapping, and URI will be student, and then let me just add here. Okay, so I want to use a student add. Okay, so whenever I will hit this URI, the student details whatever I have passed here in my request body, that student details should get saved in our database, right? So for that, let me just write here repo.save. We have the save method. This method will save this student in your table. Okay, so let me just pass here the student. Okay, now if I save this and let me just restart the server. Now if we just restart the server, okay, and for this endpoint, if I pass the student details, then automatically one student will get created. Let me just go to the Postman first, and let me use the new this one, the get all student. Let's just use this one, right? So if I hit now, currently how many students I have in the table? 2 students. Now if we hit this post URL with localhost 8080 student add, and if I pass these details, then automatically one more student will get created. Let me just hit on this. See here 200. Okay, which means your request is processed successfully without any errors. Let me go to our get mapping. See here get request, where we will get all the student data. If I hit this, see one more student got created whose roll number is 3. The name is Max, percentage 77 and branch is ENTC. This is the newly created student which I have passed here in the request body. The same data will be there in your MySQL also. Let me just hit this query, and you will see that in the database also one more student entry is inserted with the roll number 3, and the name of the student is Max, right? So this way you can create a new student also. Let me create one more student. In the Postman, you just have to write the URI, select here a post, and now let me just pass some more details. Let's suppose I want to add Ravina, and percentage for Ravina will be 65, and branch let me keep as a IT. Hit, see here, now here you got 200. OK, which means your request is successfully processed. Now if you want to see the new entry, let's just go to the database, hit this query. See here, one more entry is created for the Ravina, right? Also you can see in our get request also, if I hit this, see here, now we have 4 students, right? The Max and Ravina is created from the REST endpoints, right? So this way we can create a new student also. Okay, now what we need to do, this is our post mapping, right? But actually if you see in the Postman, what we are doing here, we are creating new entry. Okay, for this post we are creating new student, but if you see here, I am able to see 200. Okay, actually it should be 201, which means created, right? So for that we can just go here, and what I can do, in this post mapping itself, I can write here @responseStatus, and in this response status let me use the code as created, this one created. Now what will happen, if I save this, then whenever I create a new record or whenever I hit this post request, then here the status will be 201 instead of 200. 200 means okay, 201 means created, right? So now let me just save this. Automatically our changes will get reloaded here. Let me go to the Postman and change the data here. Let's suppose Pooja, %90, branch CO, send. See here, 201 created, right? So this way you can change the status also, right? Now even see here, one more entry should be there for Pooja, right? So this way we can create a new student also. Now what we need to do, we need to update the details. Let's suppose in the Postman, if you see, I have the student, let's suppose, whose ID is 2, right? And now if you see, the percentage of the student is 78. I want to update the percentage from 78 to 92, and name of the student we will just update, or we will just add here XYZ and then something else, right? So maybe currently the name is XYZ, I will just update the name of the student. So for that you need to use put request, and here you need to give the URI. Okay, so let me just create that REST point in the STS itself. So let's just write here @post request, post, not post, actually put request mapping, right? Whenever you want to update the detail, you will be using PutMapping. Whenever you want to create new student, then you will use PostMapping. Okay, so PutMapping is for the update operation. Let me just give here URI student update. Okay, and now the method will be, let's suppose the method name will be public void update students. Okay, or let me just return the updated student details. Okay, so I will return here student. Okay, and then what we can use here, first see, to update the details we need to pass the ID also, right? So let me just pass the ID, so that whatever will be the ID, for that particular ID we can update the details, right? So very first we need to fetch the details of the student whose ID is this one. If user is passing the ID 1, then here we will first need to fetch the student whose ID means roll number, okay, is the, let's suppose it is passing 1, then we will fetch the details for the student whose roll number is 1. How we can do that? Very simple. Just use here repo dot find by ID, okay, not find by ID, and you need to pass here the ID which is passed by user, and for that you need to use @path variable int ID. Right, now here we will get the student. Let me assign here a variable, okay, it is returning optionals, so you can just write here get, right, and then we will get the student. Okay, now we need to update this student details, right? So let me just write here student dot set, we want to set the name. Previously it was XYZ, now let's make it as maybe Poonam. Okay, and then student dot percentage also I want to change, so use here set method, set percentage and maybe 92. Okay, and then I want to return the student. Okay, but now see, before returning the student, whatever are the details we have updated, we need to save the details also, right? So for that you can write repo dot save and you can pass the student. Right, now what will happen? Here you will get the student whose ID is 1. After that you will update the name of the student from XYZ to Poonam. Then you will update the percentage also, and then you are saving the details, the updated details, and you are returning here, right? So now let me just save this student update ID. This will be the URI. Let's just go to the Postman, and here let me use put student then update, and let me just pass the roll number as a 2. Right, now what will happen if I just send, see here, for the roll number 2 the name is updated to Poonam and percentage is updated to 92, branch is CO. The same details you will see that in the database also it should get updated. See here, for the roll number 2 currently it is 78 CO XYZ, right? So let me just hit the query again. You will see that instead of XYZ it should get updated with the Poonam, and then for the percentage also it should get updated to the 92. Let me just hit the query and see here Poonam with the percentage 92, which means the data is updated in the table also, right? So this way we can create the the PutMapping, right, where we can update the data of a particular student. Now if you see, we are done with get all student, get the student based on roll number, create the student, update the student. Now let's suppose if you want to delete a particular student, then you have to pass the student ID which you want to delete, right? So for that let me go to our controller and let me just create the request for delete. Okay, so let me use here DeleteMapping, @DeleteMapping. You need to pass the URI, so URI will be student delete and which record you want to delete. So here we will pass the ID also. Based on the ID the record will get deleted. Okay, so now let me add public void public void remove student whose ID is this one. So @path variable int ID, this is our method. right? Now we want to delete the particular student. For that, use here repo dot delete delete the student, right? So here I have one method which will be required the student as an input. Okay, so very first let me use here repo dot find by id method, and I will pass here the id, right? So that I can get the student whose id is this one, whatever will be passed by the user. Let me assign a statement to this variable. Okay, and then the student whose id is 1, that student we need to delete. So that repo dot delete method we will be using, and which student you want to delete, that student we will pass here as a parameter. Right, now see, first we need to fetch the details of the student which you want to delete, and once you got that details, then you will pass that student object to this delete method. Then this particular student will get deleted from your table. Okay, so let me just save, reload the changes, go here in the Postman. Okay, now if we just hit this service which is to get all the students, see here currently we have how many records? 1 2 3 4 5. So currently we have 5 records. Right, now I want to delete a student whose id is 1. Okay, so for that let me create one more window here. So let's just use localhost 8080 student delete, and which student I want to delete? The student whose roll number is 1, and here you need to select the delete mapping. Right, now just hit, see here 200. Okay, which means your student is deleted from the table. Now let's just go here, hit the service. See here, you will not get the student whose roll number was 1. That record is deleted from your table. See, currently you have only 4 records. Even if you go to the database and hit this query, see here, now the record whose roll number is 1 is deleted from your table also. Right, so this way you can create the delete REST API also. Right, so now see, we have created the student, right? So we have just inserted the student by using PostMapping. To update the student we have used PutMapping. To delete the student, DeleteMapping. And to get the particular student or to get the all of the student, we have used @getMapping. Right, now if I just go to our initial slide, see here the requirement was to create a SpringBoot project, okay, which will perform the CRUD operations. Right, so now we have created the project and we have created all of these REST points. Get all student, get the student based on roll number, create the student, update the student, and delete the student. Right, I hope each and everything is clear to you, and now you will able to create your Spring Boot application which will perform or which will create the REST APIs to perform the CRUD operations. Right, if you have any queries, let me know in the comment section, or you can connect with me on the given mail address also, because maybe when you practice it you may get different errors. Right, so if you are stuck somewhere and you need the help, you can connect with me through the mail address, or you can comment also in the video itself. Okay, so that I can just go and see the comments and help you. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Okay, so in this video we have covered all the CRUD operations, and we have learned how to create the REST endpoints to perform the CRUD operations. Okay, so this is very basic project. Now we need to improve this project, and that we will be doing in our next video. Okay, so that's it for today. If you like the video, please share with your friends and don't forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you.